Hi, we're at SOAS University and we're asking students how many genders there are. How many genders are there?
Lots and lots and lots.
Infinite amount?
Yes, as many as people want.
Perfect. And is gender a social construct?
Yes.
Is it fluid?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're noticing is that a lot of people say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's apply this practically, because our audience wants to know practically how does this apply to society. So if a trans woman is convicted of an offence...
Oh, it's one of these.
One of what? Why is the trans lobby? Why is the trans lobby and the Antifa lobby and the commie lobby and all the other things that we know they are? Why are they so against discussion and talk? Because even if you're asked a leading question, you can counter that, can't you? Or you can say something in opposition to it. You don't even need to counter it, but you still can. Why is that such an issue? A year ago, they'd happily speak, but now... you can pretty much tell from the character and the get-up, you can pretty much tell that's somebody who's as radical as they come in Britain. Why wouldn't you want to talk? Why wouldn't you want to answer questions? When I talk about how children are now getting exposed to radical gender theory, that would have been another storming off point. Why wouldn't you want to talk about that? You've got women's safe spaces, you've got female sport, you've got jail time, and you've got exposure to this radical gender theory upon children. Why wouldn't you want to discuss those key areas? If you believe in what you're talking about and you believe in your cause, why on earth wouldn't you want to defend and talk about that? No, we're seeing it more and more. They just storm off. Is that a sign of guilt? I'll let you guys have a little think about that one. If it was me and I was defending my beliefs, I wouldn't, if I was being engaged by somebody who was happy to talk to me and they were being reasonable and rational and kind and I'd consent to the interview, I wouldn't be of that disposition because I stand by my beliefs. How many genders are there, sir?
I don't want to do this, I'm sorry.
You sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure? All right, mate. How many genders are there?
I think that gender's a construct, so in that sense, as many as you like.
So is there a number, for example?
No.
Just an infinite amount?
I think it's just it's not something that can be counted because it's such a personal thing of expression for me. Express yourself, you express yourself masculinely or femininely, you can express yourself as neither or both, because for me being more feminine or more masculine doesn't equate to being a certain binary way. It's just kind of who you are. I am slightly feminine, I'm slightly masculine. What I have between my legs doesn't really count towards that at all to me.
So biology is not relevant with regards to determining whether someone's male or female?
Well, biologically male and female to me is different from identifying within your gender as male or female, because they're separate things.
There was a group of people who were saying no to drag story, drag brunch, whatever you want to call it, and their right to free speech is valid. And then there was about 20 or 30 of them, and then there was about 800 angry mask-wearing people screaming abuse at them. There was one guy who was holding up a sign saying queer joy is for all ages. I'm not sure what that means, but what do you feel about that? When you hear that?
I feel that it's being happy and comfortable in who you are and the way you express yourself without having to worry about fitting into one box or fitting into a certain ideal. Everyone should be able to experience the joy of being free and having freedom of expression.
Okay, so you stand by free speech with regards to both sides of the argument?
I think free speech is defensible, but you can't then I feel a lot of people who say we deserve free speech try and say that in an attempt to release themselves from the consequences of free speech. So you can say whatever you like, but it's not like you prevent yourself from getting a reaction. If you say something, expect consequences.
Sure, and that's fair, isn't it? We've got laws in place to protect people.
Yeah.
So I think I'm hearing what you're saying. My question is, under 18, shouldn't that be protected in some regard? And then over 18, consenting adults, do what you want. That's an opinion of a lot of people, whilst we see a lot of people refer to radical gender theory being pushed on minors. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it should be for over 18s?
I think that, well, as I've said, gender is kind of more of a construct that I think is kind of, because it's so ingrained in culture, it is imposed on us from birth. And I think there's no issue with raising children without these constructs, without these kind of pressures around them to be one thing or another. So for me, if a child wants to identify one way or another, they should be able to. And when it comes to people saying things like, oh, they're pushing hormones and whatever on them, I think I've never actually heard of that happening. I've never heard of children being forcibly putting on actual hormone
no,
therapy.
it's available, but it's not
yeah.
pushed.
And also, all they'll get really at that age, especially in the UK, is hormone blockers, not actual hormone replacement. So, and that is something that can be immediately reversed.
So it sounds to me like, going back to my question, which is what I'm after today, is what's the end goal? It sounds to me like the end goal is equality.
End goal is equality and freedom, and just being able to live happily, I think.
And that does apply, as far as you're concerned, to minors, to children, to...
Yeah.
Can a child, last question, can a child determine its own gender?
Yeah.
How many genders are there?
Multiple. I don't really care what other people are.
Do you know how many? Do you know what the argument is? If there's more than two, do you know what the argument is for how many?
I guess there's a history and tradition of like non-binary genders in multiple cultures. Like, for example, India, there's a history of a third gender. Most of the time, these are trans women. Thailand as well, history of a third gender. Yeah, there's a tradition of like transness.
So there's more than two.
Yeah.
More than two.
Yeah.
If a trans woman, I just have to work this out in my own head, if a trans woman, so a biological male, was given a custodial sentence for a crime, should they go into a male or a female prison?
A female,
A female prison.
of course,
Why?
because she's a woman.
What? Okay. So would we agree that that individual would be a biological male if they're a trans woman? Is that what people are saying? Is that how you would say it? A trans woman's a woman.
I personally wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't.
No.
So, what is a woman?
Don't really know how to explain it, but womanhood is a lot more than genitals and hormones.
Go on. Sorry, yeah, I think I'm with you. So, what's a woman then? Could you define it? Based on the analogy of a trans woman would go into a female prison.
I don't know how to put it into words, really, but I don't think woman is reduced to biology, and I don't think bioessentialism is the best way to view gender.
Could you define what a man is? Is it the same with a man as well? Could you define what a man is via biology, or no?
No.
So it would be other things that we'd look at to define. I guess the
Yeah.
gender fluidity argument actually stays away from the scientific side and says actually biology's got nothing to do with it. It's to do with other factors about how
Yeah, I
someone
would
feels.
argue gender's more socially constructed than it's biologically determined.
Do you believe gender's a social construct?
Yeah.
Do you believe that you could convince an adult that gender's a social construct and that gender is fluid and that it's non-binary?
No, but I'm not particularly interested in convincing people of things.
Sure. So, for people that... So fair enough. So for people who say that gender's fluid, I often say, who's that argument going towards? Obviously, I'm looking for people's opinions, but where's that argument directed at? Because I don't believe that we could convince any over 18-year-old, whether they were male, female or intersex, I don't believe we could convince them of the gender fluidity argument, but I do believe a child could be convinced of it. Do you think a child could be convinced that they're the wrong gender or that they should change genders?
I think gender's very much an intimate thing. I think if someone feels like they were born in the wrong body, then they will feel that way. And I mean, I've always kind of been around that argument of gender fluidity, but I've never been unsure of my womanhood. Even though, I mean, I am a cis woman, never doubted that, even though I've always been very much aware of the existence of transness. I don't think educating children on transness is a danger at all. I think it's important.
Why is it important?
Because trans people exist and transphobia is very real.
Christ. Stick that in the bloopers reel.